An immigrant shared her lunch with a hungry man, and in that simple act of kindness, Elena Vasquez could never have imagined how drastically her life would change. The rich aroma of her homemade empanadas had filled the small park bench where she sat, a momentary respite from the crushing weight of uncertainty that had been her constant companion since arriving in America 8 months ago. The early October wind carried the first bite of winter, rustling through the trees that were just beginning to surrender their leaves. Elena pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders, the fabric worn from years of use. It wasn't meant for American winters, but it was all she had brought from Ecuador, that and dreams too big to fit in any suitcase. 3 job applications rejected today, 2 yesterday, her meager savings dwindling with each passing week. The citizenship interview scheduled for next month loomed like a shadow over her thoughts, turning even this brief lunch break into an exercise in anxiety. She had prepared for months, studying American history and government until her eyes burned from the strain of reading by the dim light of her studio apartment. But preparation couldn't quiet the fear that lived in her chest, the fear of being sent back, of failing to build the life she had promised her late parents she would find. The empanadas, filled with seasoned beef, olives, and hard-boiled eggs, were her mother's recipe. Even in her darkest moments, cooking these familiar foods transported Elena back home, if only for a fleeting moment. She closed her eyes, savoring the first bite, letting the familiar flavors wash over her like a warm embrace. "Excuse me," the voice startled her. Elena opened her eyes to find a man standing a few feet away. His clothes, while not ragged, had seen better days, a rumpled suit that hung loosely on his frame, a tie slightly askew. His face was gaunt, eyes tired but kind. She had seen that look before, the careful mask of dignity covering hunger. "I don't mean to disturb your lunch," he said, his voice carrying a note of embarrassment. "But whatever you're eating smells absolutely wonderful." Elena hesitated only briefly. Her mother had taught her that food was meant to be shared, that a meal divided was never diminished, but somehow multiplied in its meaning. She gestured to the empty space beside her. "Would you like one?" "I made extra." The man's expression shifted from surprise to gratitude. "I couldn't possibly, please," Elena said, her accent thickening her words. "In my country, it's bad luck to eat alone when you could be sharing." He sat down, leaving a respectful distance between them. Elena handed him one of the empanadas wrapped in a paper napkin. He accepted it with both hands, as if receiving something precious. "I'm James," he said, not offering a last name. "Elena Vasquez." He took a bite and closed his eyes. "This is incredible. What is it called?" "Empanadas de carne, my mother's recipe." As they ate in companionable silence, Elena found herself telling him about Ecuador, about the family restaurant where she had learned to cook, about her parents who had passed away within months of each other. Words tumbled out of her, perhaps because he was a stranger, perhaps because he listened with a quiet intensity that made her feel truly heard for the first time since arriving in this country. "And now?" he asked. "What brings you to Millfield?" "A new start." She brushed flaky pastry crumbs from her lap. "I have an interview for citizenship next month. I study every night." Her voice grew softer. "But I worry my English is not good enough." James tilted his head. "Your English sounds perfectly fine to me." Elena laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even her. "You are kind. But the immigration officer, I think he will not be so forgiving." "What makes you say that?" She shrugged. "People like me, we are not always welcome." "I read the news." James was quiet for a moment. "Some of the best Americans I know weren't born here," he finally said. "This country was built by people brave enough to leave everything familiar behind in search of something better." He smiled. "People like you, Elena." The simple validation in his words made her throat tighten. She had been so long without encouragement that even this small kindness from a stranger felt overwhelming. They talked until Elena realized she would be late for her afternoon shift at the cleaning service. As she hurriedly packed up her lunch container, James thanked her again. "You've reminded me of something important today," he said cryptically. Elena thought little of the encounter in the days that followed. Life continued its relentless pace. Work, study, worry, repeat. The temporary cleaning position at the municipal buildings downtown offered meager pay but steady hours. Every evening, she returned to her tiny apartment, ate a simple dinner, and opened her citizenship study materials, fighting exhaustion to memorize one more fact, one more date, one more principle of American government. 2 weeks after the park bench lunch, Elena was assigned to clean the 3rd floor of City Hall. As she pushed her cart down the hallway, a familiar voice called her name. She turned to find James walking toward her, but something was different. His suit was immaculate, his posture straight and confident. The tired hunger in his face had been replaced with warm recognition. "Elena Vasquez," he said, as if her name was somehow significant. Recognition dawned slowly, confusion following quickly behind. "James?" she said uncertainly. He smiled apologetically. "James Millfield. I should have introduced myself properly when we met." The name struck a chord of recognition. Elena's eyes widened as she glanced at the nameplate on the door behind him. Mayor James Millfield. The cleaning cart suddenly felt like the only thing keeping her upright. "You are the mayor?" Her voice came out as a whisper. James nodded. "I was taking one of my walks through the city. I like to see things as they really are sometimes, not just from behind this desk." He gestured to his office. "I didn't expect to meet someone who would share their lunch with a hungry stranger." Elena's cheeks burned with embarrassment. "If I had known, you would have acted differently," he finished for her. "That's precisely why I didn't say anything." His expression grew serious. "Elena, I've been thinking about our conversation. Would you come into my office for a moment?" Heart hammering, she followed him inside, acutely aware of her cleaning uniform, of the cart abandoned in the hallway. The office was spacious but understated, dominated by a large desk covered with stacks of papers and folders. "I understand you have your citizenship interview next month," he said, settling into his chair and gesturing for her to take a seat opposite him. Elena nodded, unable to find her voice. How did he remember this detail from their brief conversation? "I sit on the Regional Citizenship Review Board," James continued. "It's not widely publicized, but part of my role as mayor includes providing community recommendations for citizenship applicants from our city." The blood drained from Elena's face. You review the applications?" "I do." He leaned forward. "And I'd like to help you prepare for your interview." Elena stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because," James said simply, "you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. When I was a boy, my family fell on hard times. There was a period when we didn't know where our next meal would come from. A woman who had emigrated from Poland owned the bakery near our apartment. She noticed me lingering outside her shop one day and invited me in. From then on, she saved day-old bread for our family, never made us feel like charity cases, said she was just being a good neighbor." He paused. "She became a citizen the year I started high school. I still remember how proud she was at her ceremony." He leaned back in his chair. "That woman shaped my understanding of what it means to be American more than any textbook ever could. When you shared your lunch with me, you brought that memory back." Over the next 3 weeks, James met with Elena twice a week after her cleaning shift. They sat in his office, going through practice questions, reviewing American history, discussing the principles of government. He helped her refine her answers, taught her to speak clearly and confidently even when nervous. During these sessions, Elena learned that James had grown up in Millfield, left for college and law school, then returned to serve the community that had raised him. He had been mayor for 6 years, focusing particularly on integrating the growing immigrant population into the fabric of the city. She learned he was widowed, his wife having passed away from cancer 3 years earlier. His annual walks through the city, dressing down, observing without the trappings of office, had been her idea, a way to stay connected to the real lives of constituents. Elena, in turn, shared more of herself, her dreams of opening a small restaurant someday, combining Ecuadorian flavors with American classics. She told him about the promised scholarship that had fallen through just before she was to attend culinary school in Quito, about the lonely journey north, about the struggle to find her footing in a new country where her culinary skills and education seemed to count for nothing. As the interview date approached, Elena's confidence grew, not just in her knowledge of American civics, but in her right to be there, to become part of this country. James had helped her see her own journey through new eyes, not as an outsider begging for acceptance, but as someone whose experiences and determination were exactly what had built this nation from its beginning. The morning of her interview, Elena found a small envelope tucked under her apartment door. Inside was a simple note in James's handwriting: "Your story is now part of America's story. Today just makes it official." The interview went better than she could have imagined. The officer was thorough but fair, and Elena answered each question with clarity and conviction. When asked why she wanted to become an American citizen, she spoke from her heart about building a bridge between the culture she came from and the one she had grown to love, about honoring her parents' memory by creating a life they would be proud of. 2 weeks later, Elena received the letter she had been dreaming of. Her application for citizenship had been approved. The naturalization ceremony would be held the following month at City Hall. The night before the ceremony, Elena couldn't sleep. She stood at her small kitchen counter, making empanadas by the dozen, her mother's recipe, the same ones she had shared with James that day in the park. It felt right, somehow, to mark this transition with food that connected her past to her future. City Hall was transformed for the naturalization ceremony. Flags lined the walls, and chairs had been arranged in neat rows facing a small stage. 26 people from 14 different countries were becoming American citizens that day. Elena sat among them, heart racing with anticipation. Mayor Millfield presided over the ceremony, looking every bit the distinguished public servant in his formal suit. If he recognized the nervous woman in the third row, his professional demeanor gave nothing away. "Today," he began, his voice carrying throughout the hall, "we don't just welcome new citizens. We renew our understanding of what citizenship truly means." His eyes scanned the room. "It isn't about where you were born. It's about choosing to be part of a story larger than yourself. It's about bringing your unique gifts to a country that is made stronger by its diversity." As he spoke, Elena felt tears welling in her eyes. How far she had come from that park bench, from the woman who had doubted she belonged. After the oath was taken and certificates distributed, a small reception was held in the adjacent community room. Elena approached the refreshment table with her container of empanadas, setting them alongside the cookies and punch provided by the city. James found her there, a warm smile breaking through his official demeanor. "Congratulations, Citizen Vasquez," he said, extending his hand. Elena ignored the hand and embraced him instead. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." When they separated, James gestured to the empanadas. "You brought your mother's recipe. A good American tradition," she said with a smile. "Sharing food from your heritage." As the new citizens and their families mingled, James quietly introduced Elena to several restaurant owners in attendance. One of them, a woman named Sophia who owned a popular cafe downtown, seemed particularly interested when James mentioned Elena's culinary background. "We should talk," Sophia told her, pressing a business card into her hand. "I've been looking for someone to help expand our lunch menu. Maybe bring some new flavors to Millfield." 3 months later, Elena stood in the kitchen of Sophia's cafe, now partially hers, thanks to a small business grant program James had helped her navigate. The lunch rush was in full swing, customers lining up for Elena's fusion empanadas, which had quickly become a local favorite. Through the kitchen window, she could see Mayor Millfield at his usual table, entertaining what appeared to be state officials. He caught her eye and gave a subtle nod of appreciation as he gestured to the food in front of his guests. Later, as the rush died down, Elena brought a fresh empanada to his table, a new recipe she was testing, filled with apple and cinnamon. "For dessert," she said, setting it before him, "a little sweet to finish your meeting." James looked up at her, and in his eyes she saw the same man who had sat beside her on that park bench, someone who understood hunger and gratitude and the power of unexpected kindness. "You know," he said to his guests, "the best thing about being mayor of Millfield is getting to see the American dream unfold in real time." He nodded toward Elena. "Ms. Vasquez here is one of our newest citizens. She's already making our city a more interesting place to live." Elena felt a flush of pride warm her cheeks. "Just trying to give back to the community that welcomed me," she said. That evening, after closing, Elena sat at one of the cafe tables, looking through the day's receipts. The bell over the door jingled, and she looked up to see James entering, now in casual clothes. "We're closed," she said with a smile. "I know. I was hoping to speak with the chef." He sat down across from her. "The council is planning a cultural festival for next summer. We want to showcase the diverse backgrounds of Millfield residents. I thought you might be interested in participating." "Of course," Elena said. "I would be honored." James nodded, then grew more serious. "I have another favor to ask. There's a citizenship preparation class starting at the community center next month. They need volunteers to share their experiences, maybe help with mock interviews." He gave her a knowing look. Someone who understands what it feels like to be on that journey. Elena thought about how far she had come, about the fear and loneliness that had been her companions for so long. She thought about a park bench and a shared meal, about how the smallest kindnesses could change the course of a life. "Yes," she said simply. "I would like that very much." As they sat together in the quiet cafe, Elena realized that citizenship wasn't just a certificate or a ceremony. It was this: finding your place in the unfolding story of a community, offering what you could to make it better. It was building bridges between who you had been and who you were becoming. Outside the window, the lights of Millfield glowed against the darkening sky. Elena's reflection looked back at her, superimposed over the city she now could truly call home. The woman in the glass looked different from the one who had sat on that park bench months ago, stronger, more certain of her place in the world. Sometimes, she thought, the most profound journeys begin with the simplest acts of humanity, like sharing lunch with a hungry stranger on a cold autumn day.